Joining us now to break down the president's final moves before Americans turn out on Election Day is Ali Pardo, the Deputy Communications Director for the Trump campaign. So, Ali, what happens in this next 24 hours? I know that you guys have been busy for the past couple of days, but, I mean, tomorrow morning, it's the American people who decide, and there's not too much more that the candidates can do. So what are you doing over the next 24 hours?
Over the next 24 hours, we'll be all over the country talking to folks on TV, on radio. Vote, vote, vote. It really just comes out to get out the vote right now. We have built the best ground operation in history. Our team is turning out voters in a fashion, in a way that no one has ever seen before. We're really excited. So many of our voters have said that they're going to turn out on Election Day. The Democrats are in real trouble because their voters turned in ballots. Ours are showing up and pretty much having Trump rallies at the polls tomorrow. So we're extremely excited about what's going to happen over the next 24 hours. The president still has a few rallies left. He'll be closing down the night in Michigan. And then tomorrow we're going to wake up and it all turns down to the voters and to their voice.
And I have to say, even last night, I was up until like midnight or something, whatever the time the president was speaking for the last time. And I mean, he didn't lose too much energy. I'll say that. I mean, he's got some stamina going on into this race as well. But you mentioned the idea, too, that the campaign has some stamina. You guys were going door to door. And I remember Democrats were raising the alarms about this months ago, saying, you know what, we don't have an in-person type of door knocking campaign, anything of that nature, of course, because they were focusing so much on the coronavirus response. But do you think that's a real advantage that you guys have that maybe isn't reflected in fundraising numbers or polling or anything like that?
Absolutely. What we have is voters, right? I mean, Bill was talking about it earlier today. When you look at the amount of people who have voted, when you look at the votes win elections, not polls, not fundraising, not any of those things. Votes win elections. And when you look at votes, first of all, Florida is a great example. If you look at the amount of leverage or the amount of ground that we have gained just with the amount of Republicans we have registered to vote. We have more Republicans registered to vote now than we did in 2016. We're also going into Election Day with a closer margin. Democrats vote early, right? They vote absentee. We are going into Election Day when our voters show up, having to close a smaller margin than what we had to close in 2016. These are real facts, real voters, and real results, and that's why the president's going to win.
And I think that it's important, too, to differentiate what polls say and then what statistics say. And early voting is telling us because, for example, I saw Jonathan Swan report over the weekend saying that the Trump campaign actually thinks that it's overperforming in some states, that a lot of people are looking at polls and saying maybe they won't be competitive. And we know that the Trump campaign thinks it's going to be more competitive in places like Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, Texas, places that polls tell us might be more competitive, I would say, for the Biden campaign. So we know that's not the case, but we're also hearing today that the director of battleground strategy, Nick Traynor, is telling reporters that the Biden campaign just outlined on a Zoom call that said President Trump was within one state of winning. So does your information suggest that the polls are indeed off as they were in 2016?
Absolutely, and that's what we've been saying, right? Mm-hmm. Polls are off. People are showing up. I mean, the enthusiasm at our events, at our rallies, that's real, that's palpable. But as Nick said, look at their math. Yeah. Take their math apart and then add it up. It is going to be really hard for them to find the voters and the votes that they need to win on Election Day. It's almost impossible. We're feeling really, really good. And I'm telling you, people are going to show up tomorrow, show up and vote in a way that we haven't seen before. And it's going to take the president to victory.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right to say that actions speak louder than words. You can tell what the candidates are doing, where they're going. And the idea that the Biden campaign, for example, is going to states that many people didn't necessarily think would be his pathway to victory shows that they are looking for other avenues. That is one thing that I think take away from this. But you say that, for example, we hope to find out the election results on Tuesday. That's the goal, I'm sure, for everybody. But we know that there's a surge of mail-in early voting as well that may not be counted necessarily tomorrow. Do you expect that we will know the election results, if not on Tuesday, hopefully then Wednesday, or at least sometime soon after?
Obviously, look, we're hoping for an election night victory. But I think that, if it's not election night, I think we're going to see something Wednesday morning. I don't think this is going to drag out the way that, the fear-mongering and the fears that everyone's throwing out there. I do think that Democrats tried to change the way people vote in some states. It's going to cause a lagging result. But I think that there's going to be a strong and huge majority of people who still come out and vote on Election Day. One thing I want to point out, too, that really, is a good thing for the president is Democrats may have mailed a lot of ballots, but all of those ballots haven't been returned. Republicans have turned in a good amount of ballots, and that's the math that you were talking about earlier. We've turned in more ballots early than we were expecting, and that's really good for us because we still have all those Election Day voters to go out and turn out tomorrow.
And that's an excellent point because over the past couple of days, too, we've even seen Republicans kind of break down the gap a little bit that Democrats traditionally do have. I mean, I'm looking at the numbers in Miami-Dade, Florida, for example, that show Republicans right now outpacing Democrats in a very heavily Democratic district. I'm looking in suburbs around Detroit, Atlanta as well, where Black and Latino voters aren't showing up the same way they are for Joe Biden. When you're looking at these early returns, are you pretty optimistic?
We are extremely optimistic, and I will tell you this, we're optimistic because the president has done things to reach out to those specific communities that you just laid out, to my community, to the Hispanic community, to the Black community. He has delivered real results, record low unemployment, community centers across the country who have been in these communities talking directly to voters about the president's results and to what the president's agenda, and also how he wants to look forward and move forward to continue to help them with a second term. So that is why we're seeing those numbers. Miami knows we do not want a socialist country. We all fled socialist countries. Our families fled socialist countries. We do not want to go back to that same place and to that same policies that tore down our homelands and our families' homelands. So I think that is a real reason why you're seeing those huge numbers in Miami. In Georgia, I really think it comes down to everything the president laid out, not only in his platinum plan a few weeks ago, but the real results with criminal justice reform, with caring about these communities in a way that presidents just haven't recently. And that all turns into momentum, into enthusiasm, and to people who want a better future, and then they know that this president's going to deliver them up for them.
And once again, I mean, those are numbers, too, that I remember it wasn't too long ago we were talking about Latinos in Florida not showing up for Joe Biden, and based on that very thing that you're saying. A lot of them are Cuban Americans, Venezuelan Americans who know exactly what socialism did to their home country. So it's no surprise that they're a little bit weary this time to maybe hop on board with a more socialistic or progressive type of agenda. I think it's really interesting. But Ali Pardo, I know you're going to be very busy over the next couple 24 hours. So I really appreciate you coming on the program tonight and breaking down where the Trump campaign stands. Thank you.
Thank you so much.